there was a very strong attraction that I felt towards Bill. And no matter how difficult or challenging our day-to-day life became, there were always moments where I had that glimpse of him, and that's always what gave me the conviction to keep trying. Because when I had that glimpse, and that glimpse would usually happen when we would have people over, as Bill said, we were new to Philadelphia, and we'd have our neighbors over, and he would sit and he'd tell a story about himself or about us. And I would sort of see him in his element as the charming man that I had fallen in love with. I think from my perspective, it was very important for me to know the difference between who my support network was for sort of recovery and who was my support network for Chantal and socializing and all of that. And the reason I say that is in the early days of recovery, if we were struggling with something, I could go and talk to my best friend and she would give me her best friend advice. But sometimes it wasn't the best, like Al-Anon advice. And it took me a little while at first to realize that when I was dealing with some of the issues that were really intimately connected with our early recovery, it was better for me to take out my daily reader or phone a sponsor or phone another Al-Anon member and talk through these, whatever was going on with them. And when I talked to my best friend, I could just talk to her at the level I would talk to a best friend about, oh yeah, we're having a tough week together, but that was very important initially to be able to separate the two. And I think I wish I had understood that even with more clarity early on.
I think the social support is absolutely at the top of the list here. Beginning with the community of people who are in recovery, the AA community for me was the very first network. And I was fortunate that I didn't have, the group that weren't safe here in Philadelphia because we had just moved to Philadelphia. So it was the AA community socially that was the most important thing for me. But then once I got over this, I only wanted to tell certain people that I was in recovery because, what if I wanted to get back into the job market and it got out and this and that. So there was always this clearly a safe group, but clearly a group I wasn't being honest with at the same time. But I think in the first couple of, maybe it was 2 or 3 years, we were posting things about recovery and it was everywhere in terms of my situation. But that also allowed me to understand that people accepted that. People that weren't in recovery accepted and actually went out of their way to make sure that I was, if I went to their home, they'd make a special drink for me or have it ready. And that support in a community that was not in recovery was also very important. Made me appreciate my friends that way.
That community is the most important part of this, of probably all of this, because it's part of having validation that's external to the relationship as well. It's having perspective that's outside of the relationship as well. It's a sense of belonging that's outside of the relationship. There's so much that comes with community. There can be, Megan, you were talking about, when you're a caretaker, it's nice to be in a relationship where you don't feel, it's not that you are, but you don't feel responsible for the other person. I'm not responsible, for the tennis player I show up with. I'm just meeting up with them. And there's not that also emotional debt that you're carrying around. And I think the final thing is for me is that people that you meet, the new community you built, they know you as you are. They don't know you in the chaos and all of that, so that it's like you get a fresh slate in some ways and you get to be who you want to be now. And so creating a community, a fresh community, aside from figuring out who is safe from your existing community. They're two very important aspects.
And maybe when there is addiction, but people aren't identifying with a recovering community, they may or may not share about their own recovery status with their friends on the softball team or at church or in the social club or whatever. But what's the importance of community, even if someone's not saying, I need to have recovering people that I'm hanging out with? Because I think that's questionable. And I think many of us encourage people to definitely use social supports of other recovering people who will understand, the therapeutic value of one alcoholic helping another is without parallel. But that's also a bit of the AA speak, and not everyone's exposed to that. So I don't know if that stirs up anything for you, Megan. Yeah, or Al.
I sort of come from the perspective of, it takes a village, right? That it's the role of community, and that even in our marriage or committed relationship, not one person's going to meet all your needs, right? So, like whether it's tennis or, you guys may or may not share the same hobbies and interests. So I think for any individual to explore on their own, right? Like what are their things that they like to do, or even from a sense of community, like when you're struggling with something, who's the go-to person for that? I think it's important for people to identify. And that, I just think relationships are really healthy from the perspective of, we enjoy sharing ideas and having experiences with other people. And so, again, that role of support, that sense of not being alone, I think there's just a ton of advantages to relationships and being in communities.
I really kind of envision that process, in terms of the independent, self in the context of the relationship, and then, couple identity, and the value of community, in establishing all the things that we need to feel whole, to feel as though, our adventurous self or our passionate self or our curious self, that those needs are being met as well. We have all of these incredible parts that come up at various different times. Do we listen to that? Do we go toward that? I think community is one of the few ways that we can actually get a bit of back and forth in dialogue, whether it's literally with somebody else or internally going, oh my gosh, that felt good. Like, why, what is it about me that I haven't, engaged in this in a long time? And Chantal, you mentioned earlier, just being able to see the other in the context of that, doing something that they really enjoy, how freeing that is in seeing the person beyond what we've been maybe working on this whole time, going, oh my gosh, this is about, health, recovery and addiction and all of these, problems that we're bringing in, but seeing that core piece. And again, the effect that has on you, how that opens up. And community, I think, is the same way for an individual or a couple. That's the expansion of our world. And what do we decide and what do we want to have included in that? But yeah, community support, that's, what a huge thing.
Because we tend to focus so much on all the work that it can get heavy. Yeah. And so community is a really good way to introduce fun and spontaneity, because you can't control what other people are going to do.
When I left the company and got into very heavy addiction and drinking, my world just got so small. I was in the basement of this house for a couple of months, just drinking and not wanting to go out. I was the classic case of the world just got small and black pretty quickly in my case. And I think that was actually fortunate that it happened quickly. And the reaching out to new communities and new friends in recovery was a big challenge, because, I thought, I've got lots of friends, but I really had cut off all contact. So I was, just pretending with myself, I've got lots of friends. I've got so-and-so here in this country and that country. But I didn't.